Hello and welcome back to yet another Mech Deck Tech. I'm Mechanized Minion, aka the Energy King, and today we have an energy build for you, featuring Iron Man Titan of Innovation from the Marvel Secret Lair drop. I managed to get myself a copy of Iron Man as well as Black Panther going to my wife. So we'll do a build for Black Panther next week, but we'll start with Iron Man today. So Iron Man is a 4/4 flying haste for 5 mana. And on attack, they're going to generate you a treasure. Then you could sacrifice a non-creature artifact. Go ahead and tutor up any artifact that has mana value equal to 1 plus the mana value of the sacrificed artifact and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So at the very least, right, we're going to sack that treasure that we generate and go get a 1-cost artifact. Makes sense? Keep it up here? I know you are. So the obvious game plan here is to kind of chain up through various non-creature artifacts to get the artifacts that we're really looking for. And I felt Iron Man was a fitting commander to do an energy build for, though he doesn't have any energy mechanics built into him natively. But I feel like thematically the arc reactor, right, that thing is, chock full of energy. So that's the way we're going. Now, normally I would have this broken up into a lot of various categories, but I think we're gonna kind of split it into just 2 categories today. The first category is going to be just artifact support and like things that care about artifacts in general. And the second one will be the energy mechanic, which, there's obviously going to be some overlap. A lot of the things that are gaining us energy are also artifacts. It's just nature of the game. But I think we're going to have a good time here. So starting off strong in the artifact support, we have Academy Manufactor. So this is 3 mana, 1/3. If we would create a clue, food, or treasure, instead we get to create all 3. So, 1, we could tutor them up, right, because they're an artifact creature. All we have to do is sacrifice a 2-cost artifact to do so. 2, Iron Man is creating us a treasure every time he attacks. So now instead, he's going to create us a clue, a food, and a treasure. So, pretty good value there. Following up the Academy Manufactor is Crime Novelist. So, Crime Novelist is a 1/3 for 3. Whenever we sacrifice an artifact, which we're doing every time we attack with Tony, or Iron Man, not quite Tony, they're going to get a 1/1 counter, and they're going to float us a red mana, which we're pretty happy with. Now, we don't necessarily always have something to do with that red mana because we're doing this in combat, but after the first treasure gets sacked and we're chaining up, those treasures are just going to hang out for us, so we are going to generate some value from them overall. Cyber Drive Awakener follows that up. So this is a 4/4 flying construct, costs us 6 mana, gives all of our other artifact creatures flying if they don't already have it, and whenever they enter, each non-creature artifact is going to become a 4/4 creature artifact creature for the turn, so we're pretty happy with it. Following that up, we have Emery, Lurker of the Lock. So this is a 3-cost 1/2. They do have cost reduction based on the number of artifacts we control. Whenever they enter, we are going to mill 4, but we could also tap them and choose an artifact in grave and cast it for the turn. This allows us to recur all the artifacts that we're sacking outside of any tokens, so a little bit of recursion is going to go a long way for us. Jorah, Weatherlight Captain. So whenever we cast a historic spell, we're going to have to draw a card. And guess what? Most of our deck is historic spells, so we're in for quite a lot of card draw here. Kappa Cannoneer. So this is a 6-cost 4/4, but they do have improvise, so any of our, incidental artifacts that are just sort of hanging out on the field could also be tapped to help pay for this. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, which once Tony's attacking, again, is going to be every single turn, they're going to get a +1/+1 counter and be unblockable, which is pretty nice and a good way for us to get in some cheap damage. Mirror Retriever. So Mirror Retriever is a 2-cost 1/1. Whenever it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we get to return any other target artifact from grave to hand. Now, I really wish Tony's Claws didn't specify that it had to be a non-creature artifact. That way we could kind of abuse the Mirror Retriever, but I get why they have the stipulation in place. Padim, Console of Innovation. So Padim is a 1/4 for 4. Artifacts we control have hexproof, which is basically, again, our entire field. And at upkeep, as long as we control the highest cost artifact on the field, which we almost always will, we're going to get to draw an extra card, so a little bit more card draw value for us. Reckless Fire Weaver is doing work. So this is a 1/3 for 2, which is already half decent stats. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. And I'm here for it. You know, at the very least, right, when Tony attacks, we're getting 2 damage. Right, 1 for the treasure that's entering, and 1 for whatever artifact we go off and find. But, being that most of our deck is also just artifacts in general, this guy is going to go a long way to dealing a lot of damage to each of our opponents. Psy Master Thopterist. So this is a 3-cost 1/4. Whenever we cast an artifact spell, we get to create a Thopter. And for 1 in a blue and sacrificing 2 artifacts, we could again draw some more cards. Definitely here for that first effect, but the second effect to let us draw a little bit of extra cards, you know, should we find ourselves in a little bit of a bind, is nice. Scrap Trawler. So this is a 3-cost 3/2. Whenever it or another artifact is put into the grave from the battlefield, we get to return a cheaper artifact from grave back to hand. So we're pretty happy with it. Last of our creature-based artifact matters is Zorn. So Zorn is a lovely little 3/2 for 3. If we would create 1 or more treasures, we get to get a little bonus 1. And combined with our Academy Manufacturer from the start, is going to create us 6 artifacts on Tony attacking. And if we have that Reckless Fire Weaver out, that's at least 7 damage. So feels pretty strong. Moving down into some spell-slinging artifacts matter, we do have Fabricate. So Fabricate is a 3-cost tutor for any artifact we want, which is pretty strong. Now, of course, you know, if you're building Iron Man, presumably you picked up the entire package, so we are running Commander's Plate, despite the fact that it is like a $40 card, and we normally try and keep these pretty budget. But it came with it, so we're going to use it. Following that up, we have the Esoteric Duplicator. So this is one of those big scores from Thunder Junction. 3-cost, Artifact Clue. Whenever we sacrifice it or another artifact, we could pay 2 mana. If we do, we get to create a copy of that thing at the beginning of the next end step. So we're constantly sacrificing things, and the copies we create maintain the mana value of the things they are. So the copies are nice sack fodder. We're kind of here for it. Ichor Wellspring is going to follow that up. So Ichor Wellspring is an artifact for 2. Whenever it enters or goes into the grave, we get to draw a card. So we're going to sacrifice it with Tony anyways, so we're going to get 2 card draws out of this, and the ability to go grab a 3-cost artifact. Idol of Oblivion. So this isn't necessarily artifact support correctly. I guess you could argue the Ichor Wellspring wasn't either, but it was good sack fodder for Tony. But Tony's also making a treasure every time he attacks, right? So the Idol of Oblivion is an obvious include for card draw. Alright, next card, we're going to touch on it. Also not budget. Did not come in the Secret Lair. But it's such good combo potential. And it's the only reason that I let myself have it. But that's the Crack Clan Ironworks. So 4 mana, sacrifice an artifact, add 2 colorless. There's actually some infinite combos you could do with it in this deck. So is it like $30 to $40? Yes. Is it good in this deck? Absolutely. Mycosynth Wellspring. 2-cost artifact. Whenever it enters or again goes to the grave from the battlefield, we get to go ahead and grab a basic land. It does go into hand and not onto the field, unfortunately, but it's still pretty nice. It's not quite ramp, but like it is deck thinning, and we're kind of here for it. Servo Schematics. So this is more sack fodder for Tony. So 2-cost artifact as well. Whenever it enters or leaves, we're going to get a little 1/1 servo. So, you know, just more creatures, more artifacts that we could sacrifice and, like, go off different paths. Slagstone Refinery. So this is actually super cheap. It's like $1 to pick up, if that. 4-cost artifact. Whenever Slagstone Refinery or another non-token artifact we control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, or is put into exile from the battlefield, we get to create a tapped Power Stone. And with how many artifacts and artifact creatures and everything of that nature are in the deck, I'm pretty happy with it, right? It's going to ramp us pretty fast. Of course, we're also running the Unwinding Clock. Again, most of our creatures are artifacts. We have a bunch of mana rocks we didn't touch on, and we're not going to, but it's the general package you would expect to find in a deck like this. And hey, we may as well give our entire board a pseudo-vigilance of sorts. We're also going to go ahead and run a mechanized production. So we are generating a just ton of value off of creating tokens, specifically treasures, off of Iron Man attacking every turn. And honestly, you could put this onto an indestructible artifact of some sort. That way they would have to remove the enchantment itself and not just the artifact, right? It makes it a little harder. And one, right, if you put it on an indestructible thing, we're going to get more indestructible things overall, which is nice. But two, it just wants us to have 10 of the same. It doesn't have to be 10 of the same thing that are enchanted. Little sneaky bit there. Following that up, we have Storm the Vault. So, 4-cost artifact, or not artifact, but legendary enchantment rather. But whenever one or more creatures we control deal combat damage to an opponent, we get to create a treasure token, beginning of our end step. If we have at least 5, we get to transform it into the Vault of Catlacan. So, the Vault of Catlacan is a legendary land that taps to add any mana that we want, or blue mana equal to the number of artifacts we control. So, pretty happy with it. Should be a great addition. Now, let's shoot back up the deck list real quick and start going over all the energy support we're running. And there's quite a bit of it. Starting with the Era of Innovation. So, Era of Innovation is great. For 1 in the blue, we get an enchantment. Whenever an artifact or artificer enters the battlefield under our control, we could pay 1 and gain 2 energy. We could also pay 6 energy and sacrifice it to draw 3 cards. But I'm happy for either effect here, right? I'm happy to use it basically as an energy engine, or if my hand starts getting low, letting go of the engine to get 3 cards. Aether Revolt. So Aether Revolt is stupid good here. So 4-cost enchantment. It has Revolt, so it requires that we had something leave our field for the turn, which, with Iron Man attacking and sacrificing artifacts, is going to happen. Whenever we deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent that they control, we're going to deal 2 extra. And whenever we gain energy, Aether Revolt is going to deal damage equal to the amount of energy we got to any target. And with that Revolt, 2 extra. So, we're gaining energy left and right, and we're going to be paying people for damage. T45 Power Armor. So, 2-cost artifact equipment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we're going to get 2 energy. The equipped creature gets +3/+3 and won't naturally untap during our untap step. But at the beginning of our upkeep, we could pay 1 energy. If we do, not only do we get to untap the creature, but they gain a counter that gives them either trample, menace, or lifelink. All of which are good. The fact that it's a counter means that we also get to move the power armor if we so wanted, and pass out those kind of counters to other things. So I'm pretty here for it. Stone Idol Generator. So this is a 5-cost artifact. Whenever a creature we control attacks, we're going to gain energy. And we can tap it and pay 6 energy to create a 6/12 construct. We can only do that part at sorcery speed, but the energy generation off of this is pretty top tier. So I'm kind of here for it. Plasma Caster. So another equipment here. This is 1 in the red. The equipped creature is going to get +1/+1, which is fine. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, 2 energy for us. Here for it. We could pay 2 and choose a creature that's blocking the equipped creature. Flip a coin. If we win, we exile it. If we lose, we deal a damage to it. So, really here for that win, but also actually only here for that energy generation on attacks. Phyrexian Ironworks. So this is a 3-cost artifact. Whenever we attack, just in general, we're going to get an energy. So not as beneficial as some of the other attack triggers to get us energy. At sorcery speed, we could tap it and pay 3 energy to create a 3/3 golem. So, pretty happy with that as well. Following that up, we have the Izz's Generatorium. So this is a 2-cost artifact. If we would get energy, we get 1 extra. And we could tap it to draw a card, but only if we paid or lost 4 energy this turn. And we do have a couple energy sinks in the deck that we've already kind of gone over. I think there are a couple others. So I'm pretty here for it. Up next is, honestly, the first card that I look for when kind of chaining up by sacrificing that treasure, and it's the Inventor's Axe. So the Inventor's Axe is a 1-cost flashable equipment. Enters, gives us 2 energy. Auto-equips onto a creature the first time it enters. Otherwise, we would have to pay 2 energy to move it about. and the equipped creature gets +2/+0. So, enters, gives us energy, beefs up Tony, hits for a little extra. Next turn, we're probably sacrificing it to kind of move up that chain, but I think that's alright. You know it, you love it. It's Gonti's Aether Heart. So, 6 costs, whenever it or another artifact enters the battlefield under our control, we get 2 energy. And we could pay 8 energy and sacrifice it, and by sacrifice it, I do mean exile it, to go ahead and take an extra turn. So, we could hold on to it for a while, letting it gain us just a stupid amount of energy. And once we're good and ready to kind of be like, hey, I'm gonna just pop off here and win, right? We go ahead and exile it, pay the energy, take 2 turns in a row, and really just guarantee our victory. Filigree Racer. So Filigree Racer is a 4-cost vehicle. So whenever it enters, we are going to get 4 energy. Whenever it attacks, we get paid 2. If we do, target instant or sorcery in our grave gains jumpstart until end of turn, has a crew cost of 1. So honestly, Filigree Racer is here as a stepping stone. We didn't have a ton of 4-cost artifacts that weren't creatures that we were willing to kind of sacrifice off for value. And I think this does pretty well for us, right? We gain 4 energy off of it coming in. If we really had an instant or sorcery in our grave that we wanted to jumpstart, we could hold off on sacrificing it for a turn or 2. And it's just good value. Let's move into some of these modules, right? So we have the Fabrication module. 3 costs. Whenever we gain 1 or more energy, we get to put a +1/+1 counter onto a creature we control. And for 4 mana and tapping it, we could just gain energy. That second part, not good value. I understand. But that first part, top tier value. We're going right to Value Town here. It's going to work well in conjunction with our Decoction modules. This is a 2-cost artifact. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, we get an energy. And for 4 and tapping it, we can return target creature we control to its owner's hand. So if our opponents go to exile Iron Man or any of our other key creature pieces, we could bounce them back to hand to save them. And I think there's some value there. Not quite another module, but the Conversion Apparatus. So this is actually a pretty decent mana rock in my opinion. 3-cost mana rock. Taps for colorless, which isn't great, I understand. For 3, we could tap it and gain 3 energy, which is pretty alright for us. We're doing energy shenanigans, we could use some extra energy. And we could also tap it and pay 3 energy to add 3 mana in any combination of colors. So, energy becoming mana is super strong, and we're really here for it. Consulate Turret. So Consulate Turret is actually pretty decent again in my opinion. It isn't as strong as some of the other things. I think we could use it as a stepping stone and not be all that concerned that we kind of threw it away. But for 3 mana, it is an artifact that comes in. We could tap it to gain energy, or we could tap it and pay 3 energy to deal 2 damage to a player. It's super cheap, right? It's like under $1, and we're almost always going to use it as a stepping stone after having tapped it to gain the incidental energy that it produces. Moving back into those modules, though, we have the Animation module. So 1 mana. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put onto a creature we control, we could pay 1, and if we do, we get to create a colorless servo artifact creature token. We can also pay 3 and tap it to rather choose a counter on a permanent we control and give it an extra 1. So, 4 mana, if you wanted to do both effects, with a creature that already has a +1/+1 counter, get you another servo and another counter, which isn't great value. But obviously, that's meant to work in tandem with the Fabrication module. And depending on how much energy you have, if you have the Fabrication, the Decoction, and the Animation module out in the field, you could kind of go infinite. In fact, if we had the Crack Clan Ironworks on the field as well, we do just go infinite. Infinite number of +1/+1 counters. Infinite energy. Infinite servos, because we only have to sack every other servo in order to maintain that pace. So, pretty happy with it. Moving a little further up that list, though, we have the Aetherworks Marvels. This is a 4-cost legendary artifact. Whenever 1 or more permanents we control are put into the grave, we're going to get an energy. We can tap it and pay 6 energy to go ahead and tutor up literally anything from the top 6 and just slam it onto the field by casting it for free. So, Pretty happy there, and of course we're also running the Aether Refinery. So this is a 6 cost artifact. Whenever we would get any energy, we instead get twice as much, and we could tap it, gain 1 energy. We could then pay any amount of energy we want, and we get to create a big old beefy boy from it. We're going to keep on chugging up this list, though. We might touch on almost every card in here. Who knows? Tune the Narrative is actually pretty good here. This is a 1 cost instant. We get to draw a card and gain 2 energy. And the rate we're paying for it is also pretty decent for us, so we're pretty happy. Glimmer of Genius. So 4 cost instant. Scry 2, draw 2, gain 2 energy. Again, pretty decent. The Scry 2 can be handy. The draw 2 is always nice. The rate isn't as good, in my opinion, as Tune the Narrative, but like the ability to scry really kind of like... it could potentially let you see 4 cards, right? So I understand why it's 4 times as expensive. Electro Siphon. So Electro Siphon is going to be a nice little counterspell for us, and we're going to gain energy equal to the mana value of the spell we countered. Aether Spike. So this is another counterspell. So we gain 2 energy when we cast it. We could then pay any amount of energy. For each energy we paid, the controller of that spell has to pay 1 mana, otherwise the spell gets countered. So, pretty happy there. Moving up into our creatures, we are running the Whirler Virtuoso. So this is a 3 cost 2/3. When they enter, we get 3 energy. We can also pay 3 energy, and bam, create a Thopter. So, pretty happy with that. The Volatile Storm Drake is good, right? So this is a 2 cost 3/2 flying hexproof from activated and triggered abilities. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we exchange control of it and another creature an opponent controls. We gain 4 energy, and then we have to pay energy equal to the creature's mana cost that we stole. Otherwise, we have to sacrifice that creature. Synth Eradicators. This is a 3 cost artifact creature. They're a 3/3 with haste. On attack, we exile the top card of our library. We could choose to either be able to play that card for the turn, or gain 2 energy. We have to choose right away, but that's fine. We could also tap them down and pay 3 to have them deal 3 damage to any target, which is also nice. Shielded Aether Thief. So this is a 0/4 for 2. We could flash them in, which is kind of how you always want to play it. And whenever they block, we get 1 energy, and we can tap them down and pay 3 energy to draw a card. Royal Cartographer. So good, right? 2 mana, 1/3, landfall, gain energy. Tap them down, pay 6 energy, draw 3 cards. That's such good value. Overclocked Electromancer. This is a 2/2 for 3. Beginning of combat on our turn, we get pay 3 energy. If we do, we get to put a +1/+1 counter onto them. Whenever they attack, they double their power for the turn, and whenever they deal excess damage to a creature, we get to gain energy equal to the excess damage dealt. And because, like, they're going to come out and, like, kind of start swinging hard, you know, even just like a 6/6 as early as, like, turn 3 or 4 coming at someone, they don't want to take it. They're going to block it. We're going to get energy, and it's just going to be a vicious cycle. Lightning Runner. So Lightning Runner is a 2/2 double strike hasty boy for 5 mana. It's a little expensive, I understand, but whenever they attack, we get 2 energy. Then we could pay 8 energy to untap all of our creatures and have an extra combat step after this. So we're playing with energy. Extra combat steps are great, especially with Iron Man, right? It's going to let us sacrifice another artifact, probably whatever we just got to tutor up for, and keep that chain going. Electrostatic Pummeler. So Electrostatic Pummeler has, like, a soft spot in my heart. It's all for him. They're a 1/1 for 3 mana. When they enter, we get to get 3 energy. We can pay 3 energy to double their stats, and we can do that as many times as we can afford to pay for. And we can afford to pay for it quite a bit. So it starts off a little slow. I mean, obviously with some of the other things in the deck, like if we were passing out those +1/+1 counters to it kind of gains steam a little quicker. But even as a 1/1, right? Let's say we paid for this 3 times. 9 energy, which I assure you we'll have access to. That goes from a 1/1 to a 2/2 to a 4/4. Now it's an 8/8. So especially if your opponents aren't paying attention to how much, energy you have, the potential threat that's there, surprise, bam. Moving a little further up, we have Blaster Hulk. This is an 8 cost 8/8, but it does cost 1 less for each energy we paid this turn. They are also hasty. Whenever it attacks, we get 2 energy, and then we can pay 8 energy. If we do, we get to deal 8 damage divided as we choose among up to 8 targets. And for things like that, do I wish I was running a Basilisk Collar in this deck. It doesn't really make sense in here in general. But, ooh, pay 8 energy, kill 8 creatures, be chef's kiss, think about it. Behemoth of Vault Zero. This is a 6/6 for 6. They're a Trampley Boy, which we like. Whenever they enter, they do give us 4 energy. And if they were to die, we could pay any amount of energy, equal to the mana value of a non-land permanent that an opponent controls, and destroy it. The Assaultron Dominators. This is a 2/2 for 2. When they enter, we get 2 energy. Whenever an artifact creature we control attacks, we can pay 1 energy. If we do, we get to put on a +1/+1 counter, a first strike counter, or a trample counter, any of which are good. And our commander is an artifact creature, so we're pretty happy with it. Amped Raptor. This is a 2/1 for 2 with first strike. Whenever they enter, we get 2 energy. Then if we cast it from our hand, we get to exile from the top of our library until we hit a non-land. We can cast that non-land for energy as opposed to mana. So, early game, it's a little risky. I think we do have a number of kind of cheapish things that you might be able to hit something, but it's definitely more of a, like, kind of mid to late game kind of play in my mind if you're looking for that extra value. But the extra energy and the fact that it's a first striking 2/1, even early game, is pretty nice. Last of our energy creatures and last card for the deck is going to be the Aether Squall Ancient. A 7 cost 6/6 flyer. Beginning of our upkeep, we're going to gain 3 energy. We could then pay 8 energy at sorcery speed to return all other creatures to their owner's hand. Now, that's actually pretty decent for us, right? We're gaining energy, we're clearing the field for all of our stuff, and our commander is hasty, so we could play him again from, that bounce, swing with him right away, and still get in some decent damage. But guys, there are no honorable mentions for this one. I'm probably not going to do honorable mentions for these Secret Lairs, but there's a lot of ways you could build it. Let me know what you're doing with your Iron Man, assuming you picked one up or you just have a different build, a unique take on it. But as always, I'm Mechanized Minion, the Energy King, and if you enjoyed this video, felt like you got some value, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, leave it playing on a loop in the background. Share it with your friends. Hack fucking billboards and have it play there for the world to see. Don't actually do that last one. But if you want to hang out outside of the YouTube space, I do have a Discord. There's a link to it in the description. We're growing, we're hanging out, we're being nerdy boys and girls. But until next time, have a good one, and as always, good luck with your builds.